The cards slipped from Steve Harvey's hands like autumn leaves falling from a tree, fluttering down until they scattered across the shining Family Feud stage. A sharp metallic sound echoed when his microphone struck the podium, slicing through the laughter and chatter of the packed studio. 300 people sat frozen, caught somewhere between confusion and heartbreak. The cameras kept rolling because that's what cameras do, but no one behind them quite knew whether to keep breathing or hold still. In 40 years of television, Steve Harvey had faced chaos, missed cues, wrong answers, wild laughter. But never this, never the moment when an 83-year-old man standing at a buzzer could turn a game show into a cathedral of silence. It had started like any ordinary Tuesday taping in Atlanta. The lights were warm, the music playful, the air filled with that hum of anticipation that only a live studio can hold. Steve wore his signature charcoal, gray suit, and a burgundy tie that caught the glow of the spotlights just right. He was sharp, fast, and full of that effortless charm that made millions tune in night after night. Two families were playing, the Thompsons from Nashville and the Martinezes from San Antonio, and the crowd loved them. But it wasn't the excitement or competition that day would be remembered for. It was Robert Martinez. Robert was 83 years old, a retired postal worker with trembling hands and steady eyes. He'd insisted on taking his late wife's spot on the family team. His daughter tried to talk him out of it, told him to rest, to stay home. But Robert had quietly said no. He had to do this. He didn't explain why. No one pressed him. When he walked on stage, his cane tapping softly, his navy blazer hanging a little loose on his thin frame, Steve noticed him instantly. There was something sacred in the man's stillness, like he'd walked through fire and somehow come out gentler for it. During introductions, Steve knelt slightly to meet his gaze. "Mr. Martinez," he said with that warm smile audiences trusted. "What do you do for fun, sir?" Robert looked past the lights, past the crowd, as if seeing something only he could see. "I visit my wife every Sunday," he said softly. A ripple of sympathy passed through the room, and Steve nodded, smiling. But there was something in that answer that stayed with him, something quiet and unfinished. The rounds went as usual. The families laughed, clapped, shouted answers. Steve tossed jokes that landed perfectly, the energy bubbling as the scores climbed. By the fourth round, the game was close, and the question was one of those easy, wholesome ones that always made people smile. Name something that makes a long marriage work. The audience laughed knowingly. Communication, trust, patience, respect. The usual answers danced on everyone's tongues. The Martinez family buzzed in first. Robert's grandson shouted, "Communication," and hit number 3 on the board. The family cheered. They decided to play. Steve moved down the line collecting answers. Trust hit number 1, patience number 4. Respect number 2. They had one strike, one slot left. Then it was Robert's turn. He stepped forward slowly, his cane tapping against the glossy stage. The lights hit his silver hair, and for a moment, he looked almost illuminated. Steve smiled, card in hand. "All right, Mr. Martinez, your family's doing great. We just need one more. Name something that makes a long marriage work." Robert didn't answer right away. He looked at Steve with eyes that carried more years than words. "Remembering," he finally said. His voice was quiet, nearly lost under the hum of the stage. Steve leaned closer, gently coaxing. "Remembering what, sir?" Robert's fingers tightened around his cane. His voice broke slightly when he answered. "Remembering why you fell in love in the first place, even after they're gone." The sound that followed wasn't silence. It was something deeper. The audience stopped moving. The air itself seemed to hold still. Steve, master of quick wit and timing, stood completely frozen. Slowly, he set his cards on the podium. "Mr. Martinez," he said softly, "are you saying your wife passed?" Robert nodded once, tears welling but not yet falling. "6 months ago," he said. "But I promised her something before she left, and that's why I'm here." In that instant, the studio became more than a stage. It became a place of witness. The lights dimmed slightly, as if bowing to what was unfolding. What the audience couldn't see was the promise made in a quiet hospital room half a year earlier. Margaret Martinez had been his wife for 57 years. They'd met when she was a school teacher, and he was a young postal worker delivering letters to her classroom. She'd smiled. And in that one moment, Robert swore he saw his future. In the final weeks of her life, when cancer had thinned her voice, but not her spirit, she'd looked at him from that hospital bed and whispered, "Promise me you'll go on that show, take my place, show them what we had was real." He tried to laugh it off, told her she was being dramatic, but she squeezed his hand and said, "Tell them, Robert, tell them that love can last." So he did. Steve walked around the podium and stood directly in front of him. The audience leaned forward, breathless. "What did you promise her?" Steve asked. Robert looked up, his voice trembling but steady. "I promised her I'd come here and tell the world that she was my first and my last love. That in 83 years of living, nobody ever made me feel what she did. That even though she's gone, I'm still married, because love doesn't end when a heart stops beating." The words struck like thunder wrapped in kindness. Tears fell silently across the audience. Camera operators who'd shot thousands of shows were suddenly wiping their eyes. Even the producers, hidden in their booth, forgot about cues and timing. Steve felt his own throat tighten. "Mr. Martinez," he whispered, "how long were you married?" 57 years, Robert said proudly. "Met her when I was 26. She was 23. She was a teacher. I was the mailman who never stopped showing up." He smiled faintly through the tears. "She smiled at me once, and I knew. That's all it took." People always asked about the secret to a long marriage, Robert continued, but the truth wasn't glamorous. You just love them. You love them when they're young and beautiful. You love them when they're old and sick. You love them when they remember your name, and you love them when they forget it. You just love them. Steve turned toward the other family, the Thompsons, his voice thick. "Would you mind if we stopped the game right here?" he asked. David Thompson, the patriarch, shook his head, eyes wet. "Do whatever this man needs, Steve." Steve removed his suit jacket, the same charcoal one he wore in every episode, and walked over to Robert. He draped it gently over the old man's shoulders. "Mr. Martinez," he said, his voice breaking, "keep this. Your wife didn't leave you. She's right here, in every memory, in every promise, in every breath you take remembering her." Robert's tears fell freely now. "She wanted me to tell people it's possible," he said, voice quivering. "That you can love one person your whole life and never regret a day. That faithfulness isn't a burden, it's a gift." Steve reached into his pocket and scribbled something on the back of his business card. "This is my personal number," he said. "Not my manager's, not my team's, mine. What you shared isn't just a story, sir. It's sacred." Then something extraordinary happened. The opposing Thompson family left their podium and crossed the stage. David Thompson, a widower himself, hugged Robert like an old friend. The two men, bonded by grief and love, stood holding each other while the crowd rose to their feet. Both families joined hands in a circle around Robert. Steve placed a hand on his shoulder and looked out at the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "sometimes television gets it wrong. Sometimes we chase laughs or ratings or prizes. But what this man just gave us, that's what forever looks like." The studio erupted, not in show applause, but in something more sacred, the sound of people acknowledging truth. Steve took a deep breath. "Today," he announced, "both families win. Because Mr. Martinez just taught us all something worth more than money. He taught us what forever really means." That night, the crew stayed long after the taping ended. Some prayed, some just sat quietly. Everyone felt changed. And when the episode aired 8 weeks later, it spread like wildfire. 150 million views in 3 days. But those numbers didn't tell the real story. Nursing homes played it on loop, residents holding each other's hands. Hospitals showed it to couples facing their last goodbyes. Husbands and wives across the country looked at each other differently after that episode. Letters flooded the studio, 50,000 in a month. A teenager wrote, "Mr. Martinez helped me understand that love doesn't die when someone does." A woman married 30 years wrote, "He made me remember why I said yes." A young fiancé said, "He showed me what I want my marriage to become." Teachers from Margaret's old school started a scholarship in her name, the First and Last Love Fund, awarded to students who showed compassion and commitment. Robert became its first spokesperson, traveling when he could, standing in front of classrooms telling kids that love isn't about perfection, it's about keeping promises. 6 months later, he returned to Family Feud for a special reunion episode. The crowd rose the moment he appeared, slower now, wearing Steve's jacket over his blazer. Steve greeted him like family. "Mr. Martinez," he said warmly. "How are you, sir?" Robert smiled, his voice strong. "I'm at peace, Steve. I kept my promise." He spoke about letters from strangers, about couples who renewed vows because of Margaret's story. Steve listened, eyes bright, and later told the audience that this man's courage changed him too. "Mr. Martinez taught me something," he said. "The most beautiful love stories aren't loud or flashy. They're quiet. They're faithful. They show up every day." Robert still visits Margaret's grave every Sunday. He brings fresh lilies, the kind she loved, and sits beside her, talking softly about everything that's happened. Sometimes he tells her about the families who write him letters. Sometimes he laughs at how nervous he was on stage. "You'd be proud, Maggie," he says. "I told them." Steve's jacket still hangs in his closet. He wears it to every family gathering, the baptisms, the graduations, the weddings, every time love is celebrated. At his great-grandson's baptism, he stood and said, "May you find a love like I found. May you keep it like I kept it, and may you honor it even after death." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Now at 84, Robert's health is fading, but he's not afraid. "I'm just getting ready to see her again," he tells his children. "I kept every promise. I just have one more left, to hold her hand again." The Family Feud episode has become one of the most watched moments in game, show history, used in classrooms, marriage retreats, even sermons. Because Robert didn't just answer a question, he gave the world a truth it had forgotten. That love doesn't end when someone dies. It changes form, but it never stops. Steve Harvey often says that day changed him forever. "Robert Martinez showed me what faithfulness looks like," he told an interviewer later. "It's not about passion, it's about presence. It's about a man who stands on a stage and says he's still married and means it." Some nights in San Antonio, Robert sits by the window watching the sunset fade over the same street where he and Margaret once walked hand in hand. He glances at the empty chair beside him and smiles. "You did good, Maggie," he whispers. They know now. The question Steve asked that September afternoon took 30 seconds. The answer Robert gave will echo for generations. Love, real love, doesn't end. It endures, it transforms, it teaches. Forever isn't about time, it's about remembering who they were, what you had, and that promises, real promises, don't come with expiration dates. If this story touched your heart, don't just move on. Carry it. Tell someone you love them today. Keep a promise you've forgotten. And if you believe that love like Robert and Margaret still exists, hit that like button, share their story, and subscribe for more moments that remind us that humanity, at its best, still believes in forever.